I exposed my predator teacher, and he got 15 years. World's biggest disappointment. That's not what anyone said to my face, but it's what I saw in my principal's eyes the day Victoria and I walked into his office with evidence that his star teacher was a predator. He looked at us like we were the problem, like we were trying to ruin something good instead of exposing something rotten that had been festering in our school for years. I should start at the beginning. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that a year ago, my best friend tried to tell someone in authority that a teacher had traumatized me, and the principal told her to her face that she was seeing problems where none exist. When we tried to show him proof, he leaned forward in his leather chair and said, "False accusations have consequences." We just left. We were 16. What else could we do? This morning, that same principal's retirement announcement made the front page of the local news. Early retirement, they called it. Spending more time with family. Everyone in town knows the real reason. He protected a predator for over a decade, and when the truth finally came out, the school district gave him the choice to resign or be fired. He took the first option. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I was a sophomore when Victoria came back to school. She'd been the most popular girl in our grade before she disappeared for the first 4 months of the year. Nobody knew where she'd gone. Some people said rehab. Others said boarding school. The rumors were everywhere, but the truth was worse than any of us imagined. The day she walked back into first period, the entire classroom went dead silent. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. Then someone in the back row yelled, "There's the girl who got railed and is now a mom at 16. The entire class roared with laughter. Even some of the kids who used to be her friends were laughing. The teacher didn't say anything, just told everyone to settle down and open their textbooks. I watched Victoria's face. She didn't cry, didn't run out of the room. She just walked to her assigned seat, sat down, and pulled out her notebook like nothing had happened. Her hands were steady. Mine would have been shaking. By lunchtime, everyone knew. Victoria had a baby. She was 16 years old and a mother, and apparently that made her fair game for every cruel joke and nasty comment anyone could think of. I saw her sitting alone in the cafeteria while people threw wadded-up papers at her table. One landed in her food. She just moved her tray and kept eating. I started walking toward her table. I wanted to sit with her, to show her that not everyone was a complete asshole. But my friend grabbed my shoulder and shoved a crumpled piece of paper into my hand. "Don't feel bad," the note said. "She deserves this. She baby-trapped her boyfriend. Instead of going D1 to play football, he's now changing diapers." I looked at the note. Then I looked at Victoria sitting alone with papers scattered around her tray. Then I folded the note, put it in my pocket, and sat down at my usual table. I didn't go sit with her. I wish I could say I was brave enough that first day, but I wasn't. I was just another coward who watched it happen. For the next few weeks, I observed Victoria's life become a living hell. The teachers who used to love her, who talked about how bright she was and how much potential she had, now looked at her like she'd personally disappointed them. Like she'd let down the entire school by getting pregnant. In calculus, Mrs. Henderson would answer Victoria's questions with this sarcastic tone, emphasizing every word like Victoria was stupid for not understanding. In English, Mr. Davies made her read aloud from the Scarlet Letter and then asked the class if anyone saw any parallels to modern life. Half the class snickered. The worst was during health class when they did the unit on sexual education and pregnancy prevention. The teacher giving the presentation literally stared at Victoria the entire time. Didn't look at anyone else. Just locked eyes with this 16-year-old girl and talked about the consequences of irresponsible choices and how one mistake could derail your entire future. Victoria sat there and took it. Didn't look away. Didn't cry. Just stared right back. The students were worse than the teachers. Girls who used to copy Victoria's style, who'd bought the same clothes and worn their hair the same way, now whispered "slut" when she walked past them in the hallway. Her entire friend group exiled her within the first week. Girls she'd known since elementary school acted like she didn't exist. She had to deactivate all her social media accounts within 2 weeks because the comments and messages were so vicious. But here's the thing I noticed about Victoria that nobody else seemed to see. She never let the bullying turn her bitter. I'd watch her after school, and she'd be in the library tutoring special needs kids who needed help with reading. I saw her slip lunch money to a freshman who'd forgotten his wallet, telling him not to worry about paying her back. She always had tampons and pads in her backpack, and girls would come up to her in the bathroom, take what they needed, and leave without even saying thank you. They'd take her help and then go right back to pretending she didn't exist. I wanted to talk to her, to apologize for not being brave enough to sit with her that first day. But weeks went by, and I never found the courage. Everything changed the day I decided to skip fifth period. My mom had been on another bender the night before. She'd been drunk for 3 days straight, which wasn't unusual, but this time she'd gotten physical. There was a bruise on my arm the size of her handprint, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I needed a cigarette, needed to calm down before I completely lost it in the middle of class. There was a spot behind the gym where the cameras didn't reach. A blind spot in the school's security system that half the students knew about. I went there, lit up, and tried to stop my hands from trembling. I was halfway through my cigarette when I heard footsteps on the gravel. Mr. Peterson appeared around the corner. My geometry teacher. Everyone loved him. He was young for a teacher, maybe early 30s, and he had this easy charm that made girls giggle when he made jokes in class. Teacher of the Year 3 times. Coached the math team to state championships. Parents requested him specifically for their kids. "Rough day?" he asked, walking closer to me. There was something in his voice that made my stomach tighten, but I couldn't place why. I'd been caught smoking, which meant detention at minimum. So I looked him in the eye and said, "Please don't tell anyone." "I won't," he said, still moving toward me. "I've noticed you've been stressed lately. Seems like you've got a lot going on at home." He paused. "I could help you relax." Before I could process what was happening, he backed me against the wall. His hand started sliding down my arm, the same arm my mother had grabbed the night before. I completely froze. My cigarette fell from my fingers and landed on the gravel, still burning. "Just let me help you," he whispered. His other hand moved to my waist. "Back the fuck away from her." Victoria came around the corner holding a canister of pepper spray pointed directly at Mr. Peterson's face. Her hand was absolutely steady, even though her voice shook with rage. Mr. Peterson stumbled backward and immediately tried to play it off. "I was just checking on a troubled student," he said, his voice smooth and concerned. "You're misunderstanding the situation." "I saw everything," Victoria said. Her voice was cold. "Leave. Now." The way she said it made him actually listen. He muttered something about reporting both of us for smoking and then disappeared back around the corner. I could hear his footsteps getting quieter as he walked away. I stared at Victoria. My whole body was shaking now, and I couldn't make it stop. "You're okay," she said quietly, lowering the pepper spray. "He's gone." "How did you know?" "I came out here for a smoke too," she said, pulling out her own pack of cigarettes. "Right place, right time. I'm not a hero." But she was. She absolutely was. Victoria walked me straight to the principal's office. She was furious, and I'd never seen her angry before. She'd taken months of abuse without fighting back, but seeing Peterson corner me had flipped some switch in her. She demanded that something be done. That Peterson be investigated. That someone actually protect students for once. Principal Hayes barely looked up from his computer. "Mr. Peterson has taught here for 15 years without a single complaint," he said, his voice bored. "Are you sure you didn't misinterpret what you saw?" "He had her pinned against a wall with his hands on her," Victoria said. Hayes turned to me. "Is that what happened? Sometimes when we're upset, we see things differently than they really are." I wanted to speak. Wanted to tell him yes, that's exactly what happened. But my voice wouldn't work. I just stood there like an idiot. Hayes looked back at Victoria, and his voice got even more condescending. "Given your situation, I understand you might see problems where none exist. If you didn't want drama, maybe you should have thought about that before you were 15. Victoria's face turned red. Her eyes filled with tears. She turned and walked out of the office without another word. I followed her. I wanted to talk to her, to thank her, to apologize for freezing up in Hayes's office. But by the time I got to the hallway, she was gone. I didn't see Victoria for the next 2 days. But when she came back to school, the absolute worst thing that could have happened to her happened. I was in algebra when one of the guys who regularly made jokes about Victoria called me over to his desk. Derek. He played lacrosse and thought he was hilarious. I didn't want to go, but he and a couple of his friends kept insisting until I finally walked over. He opened Instagram on his phone. "Check this out," he said, laughing. It was a private account for our grade, a gossip account that posted rumors and drama. And there on the screen were photos of Victoria. Except they weren't really photos of Victoria. They were AI-generated nude images with her face photoshopped onto them. Explicit, degrading images that someone had created and posted for everyone in our grade to see. My stomach dropped. Pretty funny, right? Derek said, turning to his friends. They were all laughing. I just nodded and walked away. I felt like I was going to throw up. I'd seen Victoria earlier that day, so I went looking for her. I found her behind the gym in that same spot where Peterson had cornered me. She was sitting on the ground sobbing. Not quiet crying. Full body sobs that shook her shoulders. I didn't say anything. I just sat down next to her and put my hand on her back. After about 10 minutes, she turned to me. Her face was red and covered in tears. "You're the only friend I have left," she said. Then she leaned against me and started crying even harder. "You deserve to know the truth," she said into my shoulder. "Jake isn't the father. He left me when I found out I was pregnant." I felt my entire body go cold. "Then who?" "Mr. Peterson." The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. The same teacher who'd just cornered me. The same teacher she'd saved me from. I held Victoria while she cried, and my mind was racing. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. The way Peterson had cornered me so confidently. How comfortable he'd been pushing boundaries. He'd done this before. Multiple times, probably. Victoria told me it started the previous year when she was struggling in his class. He'd offered extra tutoring sessions after school. At first, everything seemed normal. Then he started making comments about how mature she was for her age. How special. How different from other students. "I should have known better," she said, her voice breaking. But I was 15, and he made me feel important. One day after a tutoring session, he'd kept her late. That's when it happened. She never told anyone because who would believe her? The most beloved teacher in school versus a popular girl everyone already thought was stuck up and entitled. So she'd stayed silent, and when she found out she was pregnant, Peterson had convinced her to blame Jake. Said no one would ever believe her if she accused a respected teacher. That it would be her word against his. And everyone would think she was lying to cover up sleeping around. "Why did you come back?" I asked. "Why not just stay away?" She wiped her eyes. "I couldn't let him win. I have to graduate. I have to show my baby that you don't give up when things get hard." She paused. "But now with these photos, I don't know if I can take it anymore." "We have to do something," I said. "We can't let Peterson get away with this." Victoria laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Did you not just see what happened in Hayes's office? Nobody will listen to us." "Maybe not alone," I said. "But together we could figure something out." She looked at me like I was completely insane. But I could see this tiny spark of hope in her eyes. We sat there for another 20 minutes just talking. She told me about her parents, how disappointed they were, how they kept asking who the father was. She couldn't tell them the truth because they'd never believe Peterson would do something like that. Her dad coached JV basketball, and Peterson helped out sometimes. They were friends. Her mom volunteered at school events and constantly talked about what a great teacher Peterson was. Telling them would destroy everything. I understood. My own mom wouldn't believe me about anything on a good day. On a bad day, she'd probably blame me for whatever happened. The bell rang. We had to go back inside. Victoria asked if I'd sit with her at lunch the next day. I said yes immediately. She smiled for the first time since I'd found her crying. It was small, but it was real. We walked back into school together. I could feel people staring at us. Someone made a comment about me being the next one to get knocked up if I hung around Victoria. I ignored them. Victoria held her head high like she always did. I didn't know where she found that strength. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Peterson. About how many other girls he might have hurt. About how he was still teaching, still coaching, still being everyone's favorite teacher, while Victoria got treated like garbage for what he'd done to her. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Maybe other complaints. Maybe something that would help us. I found the school's website and clicked on Peterson's bio page. Teacher of the Year 3 times. Coached the math team to state championships. Volunteer work with troubled youth. It made me sick. Everything about him was perfect on paper. No wonder nobody would believe Victoria. I kept digging. Old yearbooks were posted online, so I started looking through them for patterns. Any sign that someone else had noticed something wrong. But there was nothing. Just smiling photos of Peterson surrounded by grateful students and beaming parents. The next morning, I met Victoria at her locker before first period. She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes that her concealer couldn't hide. I told her I'd been thinking all night, and we needed to be smart about this. She nodded. I've been thinking too. Barely sleeping between my baby's feedings and anxiety, keeping me up. She paused. We can't go through official channels. Nobody will listen. We have to find another way. I suggested we start by figuring out if Peterson had done this to anyone else. Victoria's face went dark. She said she'd wondered the same thing for months, especially during those long nights when she couldn't sleep. We decided to split up and ask around carefully. Not directly. Just casual conversations to see if anyone else had weird experiences with Peterson. Victoria would talk to girls in her grade who'd had him for geometry. I'd check with sophomores currently in his classes. The morning dragged by. In English, I sat next to Samantha, who had Peterson third period. I asked how her geometry class was going, trying to keep my voice light. She shrugged. It's fine. I pushed a little. Is Peterson as great as everyone says? She got this weird look on her face. Her pencil stopped mid-sentence. Yeah, he's helpful if you need it, she said. Then she turned away and didn't talk to me the rest of class. By lunch, I'd talked to 6 different girls. 3 gave me the same kind of weird look Samantha did. One actually started to say something, then stopped herself and said, "Never mind." Victoria was already at our table when I got to the cafeteria. The one in the far corner by the broken vending machine that hummed too loud. Nobody else would sit there anyway. She looked frustrated. Same thing, she said. Girls would start to say something, then change their minds. She picked at her sandwich, without eating it. One junior named Lauren actually teared up when I mentioned Peterson's tutoring sessions. But when I asked if she was okay, she practically ran away. Left her lunch tray and everything. We knew we were onto something, but nobody would talk. I remembered something from a true crime podcast my mom listened to when she was sober enough to focus. Predators rarely have just one victim. They have patterns, types, methods. Peterson liked vulnerable girls. Girls struggling in class. Girls who needed help. Girls who wouldn't be believed. Victoria fit perfectly. Pretty and popular, but struggling with math. Parents who trusted Peterson completely. Nobody would believe her over him. After school, Victoria had to pick up her baby from her aunt's house. Her aunt watched him during school hours. One of the few family members who hadn't completely written Victoria off. I offered to come with her, but Victoria said her aunt already thought I was a bad influence. That hanging out with a teen mom would ruin my future too. Instead, I went to the library. I pulled yearbooks from the last 5 years and started making a list of girls who'd been in Peterson's geometry classes. Then I cross-referenced with honor roll lists looking for students who suddenly improved in math. It was tedious work, but I found a pattern. Every year, there were 2 or 3 girls who went from CS or DS to as in Peterson's class. Their grades in other subjects stayed the same. Just math shot up dramatically. I took pictures of the pages with my phone. Evidence. We needed evidence. That night, Victoria texted me. Her baby had been crying for hours and she was exhausted, but she'd thought of something. Peterson kept a paper gradebook in his desk besides the digital system. She'd seen it during one of their tutoring sessions. He'd made notes in it. Not just grades, but comments about students. She remembered seeing her name with stars next to it. At the time, she'd thought it meant she was special. Now she wondered what those stars really meant. The next day was harder. The AI photos were still circulating despite the administration's supposed zero-tolerance policy for bullying. Someone had printed them out and taped them inside Victoria's locker. She tore them down without a word, but I saw her hands shaking. In the hallway between classes, a group of guys made gross comments as we walked by. Bradley, the quarterback who thought he was God's gift to everything, actually reached out like he was going to grab Victoria. I stepped between them. "Back off," I said. He laughed. "You're pretty protective of your new girlfriend." His friends thought that was hilarious. Victoria pulled me away before I could respond. "It's not worth it," she said. "They're not worth it." Peterson walked by while we were at Victoria's locker. He slowed down and looked right at us. Not at Victoria. At me. His expression was friendly, concerned even. The perfect mask of a caring teacher. "Everything all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. I felt my skin crawl, but I forced myself to nod. "If you ever need to talk, my door is always open," he said. Then he walked away like nothing had happened. Victoria's face went pale. "That's exactly how it started with me," she whispered. "The concern. The open door. The wanting to help." I felt sick. At lunch, we made a plan. We needed to get into Peterson's classroom and find that grade book. Victoria said she'd helped with math department inventory during summer school and still had access through the main office. They never changed the locks, and she'd noticed teachers kept spare classroom keys in the supply closet. We'd go after school when Peterson had basketball practice. He was assistant coach and was always gone by 3:30. Didn't come back until after 5. That gave us time to search. It was risky, but we didn't have other options. Nobody would talk to us. The administration wouldn't listen. We had to find proof ourselves. The rest of the day crawled by. In geometry class, I watched Peterson teach like nothing was wrong. He made jokes about parallel lines never meeting, just like some people in high school. Students laughed. Girls smiled at him. He called on me once, and I managed to answer without my voice shaking. "Good job," he said, and moved on. I wondered how he did it. How he could hurt Victoria, try to hurt me, probably hurt others, and still stand up there like the perfect teacher. The bell finally rang. I met Victoria by the gym. We watched Peterson head to practice, laughing with some players. Coast was clear. Victoria led me to the math department office. The door was unlocked. Teachers were always in and out. She went straight to the supply closet and found the key ring with all the classroom spares. Peterson's room number was clearly labeled. My hands were sweating as we walked down the empty hallway. Peterson's classroom was at the end, past the other math rooms. The key worked perfectly. Inside, everything looked normal. Inspirational math posters about perseverance. Student work on the walls. His desk was neat and organized. A coffee mug that said, "World's Best Teacher," sat next to a stack of papers. We started searching. Victoria took the desk drawers while I checked the filing cabinet. Nothing in the first drawer. Second drawer had tests. Third had attendance sheets. Bottom drawer was locked. Victoria found a letter opener, and we managed to pry it open. Inside were 3 grade books, current year and 2 previous years. Victoria grabbed them, and we started flipping through. At first, everything looked normal. Grades, assignments, standard teacher stuff. Then Victoria found the pages with stars. 5 girls in the current book had stars by their names. 3 juniors, 2 sophomores. All had shown dramatic improvement in the second semester. The previous years showed the same pattern. Stars by certain names. Always girls. Always students who'd struggled then suddenly improved. Victoria recognized some names. Lauren was there with 3 stars. So was a girl named Natalie, who'd graduated last year. Another named Julie, who'd moved away junior year. I took pictures of every page with stars, making sure the names and markings were clear. We had to move fast. Practice would end soon. As we put the books back, a folded paper fell out. Victoria grabbed it. It was a note written on stationery, the kind teenage girls use. The handwriting looked young. "Mr. P, thank you for yesterday. I won't tell anyone. Please don't fail me. No signature." But the paper looked old, worn, like he'd kept it for a while. Victoria's face went white. "I wrote something similar," she whispered. "He made me write it. Said it was to show I was grateful for the tutoring." She paused. Now I realize it was insurance, making it look like I was the one pursuing him. We heard footsteps in the hallway. My heart stopped. We shoved everything back in the drawer and locked it. The footsteps got closer. Victoria grabbed my hand and pulled me behind the door just as it opened. Principal Hayes walked in. He looked around the empty classroom, then went to Peterson's desk. He opened the top drawer, pulled out a folder, flipped through it, put it back, and left. We waited 5 minutes before moving. My legs were shaking so bad, I could barely walk. Victoria looked ready to throw up. We slipped out and locked the door behind us. Outside, we sat on the bleachers trying to process what we'd just seen. Hayes checking Peterson's desk. The stars. The note. The pattern going back years. We have to tell someone, Victoria said. But who? The principal is clearly involved somehow. The school board, I said. The police. Would they believe us? 2 teenage girls with phone pictures and a wild story. She had a point. We need more, I said. We need one of those other girls to talk. To back up your story. Victoria agreed, but said none of them would. They were scared. Just like she'd been scared. Still was scared. That night, I couldn't eat dinner. My mom was passed out anyway, so she didn't notice. I kept thinking about those names. Those stars. How many girls had Peterson hurt? How long had this been going on? I looked up some of the names on social media. Lauren had her profiles locked down. Natalie seemed to have disappeared from social media entirely after graduation. Julie's last posts were from 2 years ago, right before she moved. Pattern after pattern. The next morning, Victoria texted that she was staying home. Her baby had a fever. I said I'd keep digging on my own. At school, I felt exposed without her. Like Peterson would somehow know what we'd done. But he acted normal in class. Taught his lesson about angles and proofs. Made his jokes. I watched him more carefully now. Noticed how he always picked certain girls to help. Quiet ones. Ones who sat alone. Ones who looked tired or stressed. He had a type. At lunch, I sat alone at our table. Across the cafeteria, I spotted Lauren sitting with a few other quiet girls. I'd seen her name in the grade book. 3 stars next to it. I walked over and asked if I could sit. The other girls looked confused, but Lauren nodded. I made small talk for a few minutes. Then, carefully, I mentioned I was struggling in Peterson's class. Lauren's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. I said I was thinking about asking for tutoring but wasn't sure. Lauren put her fork down. Find a different tutor, she said quietly. Maybe a student tutor or online help. Anything but staying after school with Peterson. The other girls looked uncomfortable. One changed the subject to the winter formal. After lunch, Lauren caught up with me in the hallway. She asked why I was really asking about Peterson. I took a risk. Told her about Victoria. About what Peterson did to her. Lauren's eyes filled with tears. I can't talk about it, she said. I've worked so hard to forget. She paused. My parents thought I was being dramatic when I tried to tell them. They said Peterson was a good man who'd help my grades improve. Why was I being ungrateful? She transferred to online school for senior year just to get away from him. But the memories didn't go away. I asked if she'd be willing to help Victoria. To speak up, so people would believe. Lauren shook her head. I can't go through it again. The questions. The doubt. The way people look at you. She gestured toward Victoria's empty table. I've seen what they did to her. The photos. The rumors. I can't handle that. I'm applying to colleges. I need recommendation letters. I can't have this follow me. I understood. But I was frustrated. How many girls would stay silent while Peterson kept teaching? Lauren must have seen it on my face. I'm sorry, she said. Then she walked away. That afternoon, I had study hall in the library. I was researching whether we could report anonymously when Brittany sat down across from me. She was in my English class. Quiet, good grades, kept to herself. She asked what I was working on. Just research for a project, I said. She nodded. Then she slid a folded paper across the table. Lauren told me you were asking about Peterson. Then she left before I could respond. I unfolded the paper. It was a screenshot of text messages. Peterson's number asking a student to meet him after school for extra help. Then the messages got weird. Asking if she'd told anyone about their sessions. Saying she was special. That he could help her with more than just math. My hands shook as I read. This was proof. Actual proof. I texted Victoria immediately. She called me from her aunt's house. I told her about Lauren, about Brittany, about the messages. She started crying. Not sad tears. Relieved tears. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't alone. We agreed to meet tomorrow to figure out next steps. We had evidence now. We had to be smart about how to use it. That night, I made copies of everything. The photos from the gradebooks. The screenshot Brittany gave me. I emailed them to myself, to Victoria, saved them on a flash drive. If something happened to our phones, we'd still have proof. I barely slept. Kept thinking about Peterson in class tomorrow. Acting normal. Picking his next victim. Maybe already grooming someone new. We had to stop him. The next day, Victoria was back at school. Her baby was better. She looked exhausted but determined. We met before first period. We decided to try one more time with the administration. This time we'd bring the evidence. The photos. The messages. Everything. If Hayes wouldn't listen, we'd go to the superintendent. If they wouldn't listen, we'd go to the school board. Someone had to care that a teacher was preying on students. We walked into the main office together. The secretary asked if we had an appointment. "It's urgent," Victoria said. The secretary rolled her eyes, but called Hayes. He came out looking annoyed. "I have 5 minutes before a meeting," he said. We followed him to his office. Victoria spoke first. She said we had evidence that Peterson was inappropriate with students. Hayes sighed. "We've been through this before." That's when I pulled out the printed photos. The gradebook pages. The stars. The pattern. Hayes barely glanced at them. Grade improvement isn't evidence of anything except good teaching. Then I showed him Brittany's screenshot. His expression changed. He studied it carefully. "Where did you get this?" "A student gave it to us," I said. "Someone else Peterson targeted." Hayes put the paper down. "This is a serious accusation. If you're wrong, you could ruin a man's career. Do you understand that?" "Peterson ruined my life," Victoria said. "I'm 16 with a baby because a teacher I trusted took advantage of me. How is his career more important than that?" Hayes said he'd look into it, that we should go to class and let him handle it. Something about his tone was off. Too calm. Too dismissive. We left feeling defeated again. "He's not going to do anything," Victoria said. "He'll probably warn Peterson, and then it'll get worse." As we walked to class, someone called Victoria's name. We turned to see Mrs. Chun, the AP biology teacher. She asked if we could talk after school. Said it was important. We agreed, confused. Mrs. Chun had never paid attention to either of us before. The day passed slowly. Peterson seemed different in geometry. Distracted. He kept checking his phone. At one point, he stared at me for too long. Did Hayes tell him about our meeting? After class, he asked me to stay behind. My blood went cold. "I have to get to my next class," I said. "It'll just take a minute." Other students were filing out. Soon we'd be alone. I grabbed my stuff and headed for the door. He called my name again. Said we really needed to talk about my grades. About my potential. About how he could help me. The words were innocent. The tone wasn't. I practically ran out of the room. After school, we met Mrs. Chun in her empty classroom. She closed the door and pulled the blinds down. She sat on a desk and looked at us for a long moment. Then she asked if we were the ones asking questions about Peterson. We nodded. "I want to help," she said. Victoria asked why she cared. Mrs. Chun said she'd noticed patterns over the years. Girls who suddenly dropped out of activities. Who changed from outgoing to withdrawn. Who improved drastically in just Peterson's class. She'd tried talking to Hayes about it 2 years ago. He shut her down immediately. Told her she was seeing problems where none existed. Threatened her job if she kept spreading rumors. So she stayed quiet, but kept watching. I asked if she had proof. She shook her head. Just observations. But she said other teachers had noticed things too. Mr. Rodriguez in Spanish. Mississippi Park in history. They'd all tried to speak up at different times. All got shut down. Peterson was untouchable. He brought in awards. Parents loved him. The school board thought he walked on water. Mrs. Chun pulled out a business card. Detective Sarah Mills. Local police department. Specialized in crimes against minors. "She'll take you seriously," Mrs. Chun said. "But once you talk to police, everything changes. The school will circle wagons. People will take sides. It'll get ugly. Are you ready for that?" Victoria held the card like it might burn her. I knew she was thinking about her baby. Her parents. How much worse things could get. Then she straightened her shoulders. "Yes. I can't let Peterson hurt anyone else." Mrs. Chun said she'd call Detective Mills and set up a meeting. She told us to gather all our evidence and be careful. Peterson had friends in high places. The next 2 days were tense. Peterson watched us constantly. At lunch, I'd catch him staring from across the cafeteria. Bradley made a joke about Peterson having a thing for the teen mom and her friend. It made my skin crawl Detective Mills agreed to meet us that Saturday at the police station. Mrs. Chun came with us. The station was smaller than I expected. Detective Mills was younger than I thought too. Maybe early 30s. Kind eyes. Firm handshake. She took us to a private room. "Tell me everything," she said.
No judgment. No rules.
Just the truth. Victoria went first. She told the whole story. The tutoring. The compliments. How Peterson made her feel special. How things changed. How he started touching her shoulders, her hands. How he'd keep her after sessions. How one day he kissed her and she froze. How it escalated. How when she got pregnant, he convinced her to blame Jake. Detective Mills took notes without interrupting. When Victoria finished, I showed her our evidence. The photos. The stars. Brittany's screenshot. The pattern. Detective Mills studied everything carefully. Asked questions about dates, times, specific incidents. When we finished, she said she believed us. But believing wasn't enough. She needed more evidence to build a case. She asked if we could get other victims to come forward. That I told her about Lauren. About the other girls who wouldn't talk. Detective Mills said she understood their fear, but their testimony would make the case stronger. She gave us her direct number. Said to call if we remembered anything else. She also said to be careful. If Peterson suspected police involvement, he might destroy evidence or intimidate witnesses. We left feeling both hopeful and terrified. Monday at school. Peterson wasn't there. A substitute taught geometry. Rumors flew. Someone said he was sick. Someone else said teaching conference. But Victoria and I knew better. AT lunch. Hayes called us to his office. He looked furious. "Did you go to the police?" he asked. "We tried coming to you," Victoria said. Hayes said we didn't understand the damage we were causing. That Peterson was a good man. That these accusations would ruin him. What about the girls he hurt? I said. Their lives? Their damage. Hayes said that was alleged. Unproven. We were destroying a man's career on rumors and misunderstandings. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "You should be careful. Making false accusations has consequences. Legal consequences." Victoria stood up. "We're done. We have nothing else to say without a lawyer present." Hayes's face went red, but he let us leave. We texted Detective Mills about the meeting. She said to document everything.
Write down exactly what was said.
Build a paper trail. The rest of the week was chaos. Peterson didn't come back. The substitute became permanent. Rumors went wild. Then the backlash hit. Peterson's supporters came out swinging. A group of parents started a petition saying he was being railroaded. They called Victoria and me liars looking for attention. The AI photos resurged with new captions about Victoria trying to destroy a good man. It was brutal, but then something unexpected happened. Brittany came forward. Walked into the police station with her parents and gave a full statement. Then Lauren's parents called Detective Mills. Their daughter had something to say. One by one, girls started speaking up. Not publicly. Not at school. But to the police, Mrs. Chin kept us updated. More teachers were coming forward too. Mr. Rodriguez had documentation going back 3 years. Mississippi Park had emails where Hayes told her to mind her own business. The investigation expanded. It wasn't just about Peterson anymore. It was about a system that protected him. Detective Mills interviewed dozens of people. Current students. Former students. Teachers. Administrators. The stories were depressingly similar. The investigation took months. There were depositions. Evidence reviews. Legal procedures that dragged on forever. Victoria and I continued going to school. Facing daily judgment from both sides. But we had each other. And slowly we had others too. Girls who'd been silent started nodding at us in the halls. Some whispered thank you when no one was looking. Finally, Peterson was arrested. Multiple counts of inappropriate conduct with minors. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just our testimony, but physical evidence they found when they searched his home. Photos on his computer. The grade books weren't just tracking grades. They were tracking conquests. The community exploded. Parents who defended him were shocked. The school held emergency meetings. Brought in counselors. Promised full cooperation. Hayes announced his early retirement. Everyone knew the truth. He was getting out before they could fire him. The students who tortured Victoria started backing off. Some even apologized. The AI photos disappeared, Bradley got suspended for 2 weeks when it came out he was one of the ones who created them. His football scholarship offers got withdrawn. Victoria started healing. She still had hard days. Still dealt with judgment.
But she also had support now.
Other survivors who understood. Teachers who believed her. She started talking about college again. About becoming a social worker to help other girls. The legal process was slow. Hearings. Delays. Motions. Peterson's lawyer tried every trick. Eventually, he took a plea deal. 15 years in prison. Registry as a sex offender. Never allowed to teach again. IT wasn't enough for what he'd done. But it was something. The school district made changes too. New policies about student-teacher interactions. Mandatory reporting training. Anonymous tip lines. Some people said it was too little too late. They were probably right. But at least future students might be safer. I testified at one of the hearings. Talked about that day behind the gym. How Victoria saved me. How many other girls she tried to protect even when everyone hated her. The prosecutor said our evidence was crucial. The grade books. The photos. The pattern. Without that, Peterson might have walked. Victoria squeezed my hand when I finished testifying. We'd done it together. Life went back to normal eventually. As normal as it could be. Victoria graduated with honors despite everything. Walked across that stage with her baby in the audience, and her head held high. I have 2 more years of high school. But they're different. Better. The culture has shifted. People are more aware. More willing to speak up to Mrs. Chun became our unofficial mentor. She helped Victoria with college applications. Helped me figure out what I want to do with my life. She said we'd shown more courage than most adults she knew. That we'd changed things. Saved lives probably. I don't know about that. We just did what felt right. What had to be done. Peterson's sentence made the local news. They didn't name victims, but everyone knew. Victoria gave one interview. Anonymous. Voice disguised. She said she hoped other girls would speak up. That they'd be believed. That the adults meant to protect them would actually protect them. She said she was healing. Moving forward. That her baby would grow up in a better world because people finally listened. That's really the whole story. It was messy and painful and complicated. Nothing like the dramatic revelations you see on TV. Just 2 teenage girls who refused to let a predator keep hurting people. Who found their voices when everyone tried to silence them. Who learned that sometimes doing the right thing means everything gets worse before it gets better. But it does get better. Victoria's in college now. Thriving. I'm applying next year. Thinking about criminal justice or social work. Maybe both. Those AI photos? The creators got more than just school punishment. Creating and distributing explicit images of minors, even AI-generated ones, is a federal crime. They're all doing community service and probation. Their college dreams are pretty much shot. Peterson's in prison where he belongs. Hayes is gone. The school is safer. Not perfect, but better. And Victoria? She's the strongest person I know. Still kind. Still helping others. Still refusing to let what happened define her. She says her baby saved her life. Gave her a reason to fight, but I think she saved herself. And maybe saved a lot of other girls too. If you're going through something similar, speak up. Find someone who believes you. Don't give up. IT gets better. I promise.
Catch you again soon.